I carried a high-powered gaming laptop halfway across the world to our brand new Phoenix, Arizona location, and I barely noticed it was in my backpack. This slim beauty right here is the HP Omen 16. But don't let its diminutive size fool you. This thing packs a punch when it comes to gaming, thanks in no small part to the RTX 5080 under the hood. But that 5080 is far from the only thing that this laptop has going for it. Beyond that RTX 5080, the HP Omen MAX also features an AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX375, 32 gigs of DDR5 5600 RAM, and a 1TB PCI Gen 4 SSD. It can handle just about anything you can throw at it, whether you're gaming or working with local AI. All of that power is funneled into a 256 by 1600 IPS display with a whopping 240 Hz refresh rate. As far as ports go, you have two USB 3.0 Type A options, as well as two USB 4.0 Type C options, one HDMI port, a LAN RJ45 port, and of course, a charge port. While that might not seem like a ton of ports, that is a plethora for anyone taking this laptop on the go, giving you enough options to hook up hard drives, SSDs, or anything else you might need, including and up to a second monitor, making your gaming on the go all the more potent. Originally, I had every intention to sit down and spend some time gaming with this while I was in Phoenix. However, y'all absolutely showed up to our brand new Phoenix location, and I didn't have any time to sit down and actually play with it. A wonderful, wonderful problem to have, and if you want more information, you should go check out our Phoenix opening videos. They're pretty awesome. However, the one thing that I did get to do with this was carry it, and carry it I did. It basically lived in my backpack, including the charging brick, and I rarely, if ever, noticed it. Now, if you've carried a gaming laptop, you know how impressive that is. These things, especially when you have the power brick, can weigh a lot. The one thing that I did get to do with it while I was traveling was I did set it up on the plane into Phoenix at one point. However, I will say this, if you are flying with the laptop, there is not a ton of room for both the laptop and a mouse on an in-flight tray table, which means that unless you're a complete whiz with the trackpad, most FPSs are probably not going to happen mid-flight. However, there is still a ton of power under the hood to handle things like Planet Coaster 2, or other Sims or indie titles like The Binding of Isaac or Blueprints. So gaming is still very much on the tray table. However, if you have the option to plug in the HP Omen 16 when you game, you should absolutely take it, as that unlocks the full potential without draining your battery immediately. And speaking of full potential gaming, let's spend some time exploring what the HP Max 16 can do. We're gonna start things off with the tried and true Cyberpunk 2077, and I'm just gonna run some of its in-engine benchmarking to get a better feel for what this laptop can do when it's given its full potential. Now, I'm gonna run a couple of tests through Cyberpunk, and I'm gonna start things off keeping the frame generation potential of the 50 series off. Now, the one thing I will say before we get too far into benchmarking with this is that we are using OBS to record directly from the screen while doing so. This shouldn't have too much of an impact on our end numbers. However, you might see numbers that are a little bit lower. I'm talking 1 to 2 frames than you might see elsewhere. So bear that in mind as we start things off with a ray tracing low, no frame generation benchmark. I like to start off without frame generation to get a feel for exactly what the computer is capable of doing before we add in the power of the NVIDIA 50 series and DLSS 4. Let's get going. All right, I mean, right off the bat, we're seeing some FPS in the high 90s. And again, this is all without any sort of frame generation, entirely done on system. And that is, again, also on ray tracing low. You drop the ray tracing from this benchmark and that number is going to spike, something that we're going to find out next in a second here. However, ray tracing is usually where most of the GPU intensity is going to be going towards at this point, but now we step outside and our FPS jumps to 100. So after our first test, and this is on ray tracing low, 0 frame generation, that means none of DLSS 4, nothing like that. It's all natural native frames, we end up with an FPS of 94.72 FPS. That is stunning and well past the 60 FPS that most people use as their golden standard for AAA story-driven titles like Cyberpunk. And that's actually even pushing into the territory where most people are gonna start to say that you're good to do esports. And keep in mind, that's on Cyberpunk, the intense game to test your computer against nowadays. However, Let's see how that does when we get rid of ray tracing, and I've got a feeling that number is going to spike. And in fact, I'm so confident that that number is going to spike, I'm not even going to suggest that we do ray tracing low, I'm going to suggest that we just do ultra, which is as much graphics as possible without the ray tracing. Let's go. Now our FPS has taken a little bit of a hit by about 3 frames per second from our standard ray tracing low. The big difference here, however, is that we have the quality up as high as it can possibly get, and we're still hitting 90 FPS. Our highs were in the 115 FPS range. So if ray tracing isn't important to you and all you're looking for is graphical fidelity, again, you're gonna be more than good to game on this laptop without any issue whatsoever. But now we're gonna test things with some frame generation, and this is where I do expect things to jump up by quite a bit. So before I talk about these results, I just want to recap that last time we ran this without any sort of DLSS, our frame rate sat at about 94, 95 for your average. This time, it's 229.74. That is well over double the frame rate just by adding in that extra little bit of DLSS juice. Just showing how absolutely incredible DLSS can be for any sort of gaming anything. Honestly, that's a massive increase. I'm a little struck by just what to say because that is genuinely an absolutely incredible increase in frame rate. However, that's not the end of Cyberpunk 2077, as we have one last test, which is to say ray tracing overdrive, DLSS frame generation, 4 times on. Let's see what this bad boy can do. Over 100, that's what we're looking for. Now, ray tracing overdrive, again, is the absolute pinnacle of what Cyberpunk 2077 has to offer. It is designed to tax your system to its absolute limit. We scored 138.29 average FPS on this. That is so far above what is recommended to play a AAA story-driven game like this, it's not even funny. If you are looking to pick up Cyberpunk 2077 and a laptop that you can carry with you and experience it to its utmost, this is the laptop to do it. However, there are 2 other games that I want to cover very quickly, the first of which is Overwatch 2. So when it comes to Overwatch 2 and esports titles in general, part of the problem with showing off the capabilities of this laptop is the internet that we are surrounded by. So while we're experimenting with Overwatch 2, the one thing I'm going to caution about is that we are not going to be playing any online matches just because the internet in our studio doesn't exactly support it super well, and I don't want any sort of lagging or hitching to be misread as a frame drop. So instead, I am just walking around the training room with my queen of the junker variety to see how she performs and how the system performs during some of her more boisterous attacks, shall we say, as well as just getting a feel for, like, generally what it's going to be like playing the game. And the answer is over 200 FPS on average. Keep in mind, during an actual game, there might be a little bit more going on, which could drop it into your upper 190s or whatever. However, for something like this, it's very clear that you're going to be more than good to get the most out of your esports experience, whether you're playing Overwatch 2, Apex Legends, Call of Duty, Fortnite, or any of the other plethora of esports titles currently on market. Now, I want to finish this the same way I finish off most of these reviews, with ULTRAKILL, the indie game that has so much happening on the screen at any one given moment. It is a great way to see how well the screen actually handles everything going at once. We're gonna start a little bit higher up on the cyber grind just to get things going here with a little bit of chaos and everything else that is about to explode on this map. And I'm just gonna talk a little bit about the fact that I think this is a fantastic laptop. If you are looking for something to either take with you to college or take with you just as a travel gaming option, the HP Omen MAX 16 is a great option. As I said, in all of my travel across Phoenix and back to Columbus, Ohio, I carried this thing with me and barely even noticed it, which again speaks a lot to the fact that I had another laptop already in my bag, and yet I still did not feel the weight that I did when I was carrying around an old gaming laptop back when I was in college a decade ago. So the one thing I love about ULTRAKILL is it kind of is the final piece of the trifecta. We've done AAA gaming, we've done esports gaming, now we have indie gaming. And indie gaming, a lot of times people see as something that's meant to be run on any computer. And for the most part, that's absolutely true. The one thing I will say about ULTRAKILL is that it is one of the more bombastic indie games out there and is great to just show off everything going on its screen at one time, especially without tanking our frame rate. We're sitting at 280 right now, but we're gonna dive into this and probably drop to about 220, which is still just so much frame rate for anything that you are doing, especially if you are looking for a quick, action-packed game like ULTRAKILL or your esports titles like CSGO, CS2, or anything along those lines. So again, this is why I'm quite a big fan of ULTRAKILL as a touch point, because it is just chaotic, it is busy, it doesn't stop moving, and yet this computer, the HP Omen MAX 16, is handling it with zero issue. And I'm gonna stop right there and say that if you are looking for a gaming laptop, whether you're looking for something to travel with, take to college, or just have on your desk at home as a desktop replacement, the HP Omen 16 is a stellar option. The onboard 5080 has more than enough power to handle esports, AAA gaming, indie gaming, as well as anything else you could want, including and up to some low-level LLM work. So if you're looking to get into the AI space, this also might be a fantastic way to do it. The HP Omen 16 Max is available now at your local microcenter. So if you're interested in this or other gaming laptops, stop by. Our knowledgeable associates will be more than happy to make sure that you get the laptop that fits your lifestyle. And if you don't have a microcenter near you, comment down below with hashtag I want a microcenter near me. There's a bug in the studio and I can see it flying around my head. That's Jeremy. He's hanging out for the shoot.